Hola estudiantes y bienvenidos a la clase de español. Hoy vamos a hablar de conjugación. So what is conjugation? And more importantly, how do we do it? And why is it important for that matter? So we're going to talk about conjugation. Now, if you haven't been in a language class before, you've probably never heard this word and it sounds a little bit weird, but it makes sense, I promise. So what is conjugation? Well, we're going to start first with what is unconjugation. So what does it mean if something's not conjugated? So unconjugation or non-conjugation is when there is no subject attached to the action. There is no one doing the action, right? The action is our verb. It's the thing that's happening. It's the action itself. If there's nobody doing that action, the action just exists, then we call that an unconjugated verb because there's nobody doing it. So my examples here, to run, to walk. We're not saying anybody is running right now. We're not saying anybody is walking. We're just saying to run, to walk. They are actions. I'm essentially making my action a noun. I'm just saying it exists, right? To run, to walk. They are actions that exist. There's nobody doing them right now. They just exist. All right. Conjugation is the opposite. So when there is a subject attached to that action, someone is doing it. So if we want to switch this around, we want to take to run, we'll say Bob runs or Jane walks. So we have, for my example here, she runs, he walks. Now there's somebody doing that action, meaning it's conjugated. Now this doesn't make a whole lot of sense because English is a little bit weird in its conjugations. However, it makes a lot more sense in Spanish when we see it broken down. But as long as you get this idea that conjugated verb is a verb that has somebody directly attached to it, somebody's doing that action, and an unconjugated verb is when there is nothing attached to it. So we just saw how an unconjugated verb in English has to in front, right? We have to run, to walk, to dance, to read, all of those things. It has a to in front of it. In Spanish, remember there are three types of verbs. There's the AR, the ER, and the IR. When those AR, ER, IR ending is on the end, that means it's unconjugated. So hablar, that we talked about in our verbs video, it has AR on the end. That means that it is unconjugated. There's no subject attached to it, which means it's unconjugated. All right? Each of the verbs, AR, ER, IR, are associated with their own endings. Now, these endings are different for so many ways. We're going to talk about the present tense endings only, but there are different moods. There's subjunctive mood, there's the indicative mood, which is what we're talking in, there's the imperative, and then within that, there's time frames. There's past, present, future, conditional. All of those things, they're going to give you different endings. So we're only going to talk about present tense endings, but they are different for AR, ER, and IR. And they're going to change depending on what person is attached to the verb. So if you remember back in our person video, we talked about how a person is a noun or a pronoun that it works as a subject to the action. So that person, those people we talked about in the boxes, hopefully you haven't forgotten about those, they're going to directly link to how we're going to add the endings to the verb. All right, so buckle in because it's about to get a little bit confusing, but it's going to be perfectly all right. So first, let's talk about connecting the person to the verb. I've already kind of given you this idea. So we have a person, which is a noun, right? Even if it's a pronoun, he, she, I, you, all of those things that are still going to be a subject. But if we have Bob, or we have the dog, or we have Captain America, those are all nouns. Some of those are proper nouns, right? And those can all be a subject. They can all be somebody or something that is doing an action. So the verb is conjugated, aka it has a person connected to it, based on the person that we are using as the subject. So first, second, or third, singular, plural, right? So hopefully this is coming back to you. We divided those different people up into first, second, third, singular, plural. And now's a chance to kind of connect that with our verbs, right? So if I have Captain America as my subject, that's not me, it's not you. It has to be third person, and there's only one, so that's third person singular. And you're going to go to that third person singular box. Now, why do I mention the boxes? Well, this is why. Isn't it beautiful? So let's start first. I'm gonna get my little pointer stick out here with this. This should look very familiar to you, right? This is the people. So keep this in mind. Here's the people. We have singular, plural, first, second, third. All right. We're going to keep this box, but mentally erase these things right here. So we're going to first decide what kind of verb. These are the steps to conjugating a verb, right? Think about those verbs we talked about. These are the steps to conjugating one, the steps to applying a person to the verb. So first we're going to decide what kind of verb it is. Is it an AR verb? Is it an ER verb? Or is it an IR verb? And then you're going to take off that ending, AR, ER, or IR. All right, so if I look up here to my first thing, this is the verb hablar. All right, Hablar, hablar. I take off my AR and I'm left with able. So I'm going to put able in every single box, HABL in every single box. The next thing I'm going to do is add the proper ending. Now, if I gave you a specific person, if I said nosotros, what I'm going to have you do is that's first person plural. So I'm going to go with my box, first person plural, and I have amos on the end. So hablo, amos, hablamos. So as you can see on my boxes here, I have bolded the endings. So if you are diligently taking notes, as you should be because there are boxes for you to write these, I want you to just write down under AR, o as a, amos ice on. O as a, amos ice on. All right, those are your AR verb endings. Now, any verb that we do that has an AR on the end, we're going to follow the steps of conjugation. We're going to take off the AR, and then you're going to add the proper ending. So if we're doing the full box, we're going to add O to the first person singular, as to the second person singular, a to third person singular, and so on. All right, so let's go through the rest of our endings, and then we're going to do some practice and see how you can do. I'm going to write on the screen so you can see it worked out directly in front of you. All right, so for ER, we have AR up here, we have ER down here. I'm going to go ahead and write that on the screen for you. So we have AR, ER, and IR. All right, so for our AR, we have the O, as, a, almost, ice, on. For ER, we have O, S, A, amos, ace, and N. All right, so in your boxes, what I want you to write is just the ending, not the full word, just ending. O, S, A, amos, ace, N. Now, IR is extremely close to ER. All right, it's almost exactly like it. We have O, we have ace, we have A, and then it changes in these top two. All right, we have emos instead of amos, and then we have is instead of ace, and N instead of N. All right, so once you've gotten those all finished, go ahead. I would suggest you pause it until you finish writing down your endings. Remember, make sure you have your notes here until you've memorized these, and I suggest that you do memorize them. Then go ahead and make sure you have this on hand so you can refer back to it. Okay, now that you have all of that written down, all the endings written down, and you have your people, hopefully, like I said, memorize, but if not, have those handy so you can look at them. We're going to do some examples together. So the first thing I want you to see here is what kind of verb it is. So I have bailar. My first step is to identify what kind of verb it is. So what kind of verb is it? Perfect. We got an AR verb here. My pen is not working well. So you have an AR verb. The next step is to take that off, all right? So you can eliminate it. And if you want to follow along, that wouldn't be a terrible idea. Just kind of follow along on some note paper so you can get that practice in, all right? The more you write it, the more it's going to get stuck in your head. So we've taken off the AR. Now we're left with bile. Bile. I know it looks kind of like bale, but in Spanish, remember, a-e, bile. Bile. All right, so I'm going to put bile into every box in in my master box here. So first, second, third, singular, plural. The BAIL is going to remain consistent. That's going to be in all of them. All right. Oop, one more. Just forgot about that last guy. All right, so we have bile in every single one of these. Now what I want to do is add the endings. Now I haven't specified a certain person, remember? We only need to find a proper ending specifically if I say, okay, I want you to tell me, so FYI, this is to dance. I didn't say that. So bailar is to dance. So if I wanted to say, I dance, you would think to myself, okay, yo, first person, singular. So I would go to first person and I would go to singular right here, first person, and then we go singular, and you would find there that you just need this one right here. However, because I haven't given you that specification, what we're going to do is add the endings to every single one. All right, let me change the color of my pen real fast. So first person is going to be an O. Bailo. Yo bailo. This is I dance. All right. Yo bailo, I dance. All right. Second person, we're going to put our AS on the end. And then the A, the amos, ice. Don't forget your accent. And on. All right. Now, why don't we have those people in front? Because if you don't notice or haven't noticed yet, these endings are all different. Unlike in English where we have very similar endings or no ending at all, I run, you run, they run, all the same run, we have to have who in front. However, because we have different endings for each of these, you don't necessarily need to identify your subject because it's implied. Now, you would need to identify it with at least the first time in the third person. Why? Because it can be anything, right? It can be the dog, it can be he, it can be Billy Bob over at the Jumbo Shack. So any of those people can be in third person. So you do want to specify with third person who it is, but you don't need to specify with all of these just because there's a correct answer or a correct ending or a different ending. There we go. There's a different ending on every single one of these. All right. But to get in that habit, it's a good idea to always attach those because remember, you want to memorize those people. You want to memorize the persons that we have that connect to the people or to the verbs. All right. So hopefully that made a sense. We're going to go ahead and do another example. So this is aprender. So very first step, I want you to try and answer these questions I'm saying before I answer them for you. So aprender, step one, what kind of verb is it? It's an ER verb. We have ER on the end. All right, step number two, we need to eliminate the ER. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in just this first part, the part that comes before the ER, aprend, to every single box. Remember, you can follow along with me so you don't have to stare at the screen while I'm writing. All right, so I've added my operand to every single box. Now what I need to do is add my endings. So for the first person singular, use your notes. We have O, ace, A, amos, ace, and N. All right, so yo aprendo, I learn. Tú aprendes, you learn. Él aprende, he learns. El perro aprende, the dog learns. Nosotros aprendemos, we learn. Vosotros aprendéis, y'all learn. Ellos aprenden, they learn. All right, you see how it's breaking apart? We have first person singular, I. If we have the first person singular, I learn. Second person singular, you learn. Third person singular, he learns or anything learns. First person plural, we. Second person plural, y'all. Third person plural, they. All right. Hopefully this is connecting for you. I want you to go ahead and try. With our next one here, we have decidir. It's to decide. All right. I want you to go ahead and pause real fast right now and see if you can do this one on your own. Use your notes, but go ahead and do that system that I have just taught you to do this verb. All right. Pause it here. Okay, hopefully you paused. That was all of half a second for me, but it could have been up to 5 minutes for you. It doesn't matter how long it takes. All right, so step 1, what kind of verb is it? It's an IR. Step number 2, get rid of it. Now I'm going to take my decide and add it to each one of my boxes. Decide. And if at any point you see that you have gone wrong, make sure you take note of that. Where did you go wrong? And what happened? What did you skip? Did you skip a step? Did you add a step? What happened in that process? So we have all of the seeds written in here. Now I just want to add my endings. So I'm going to go straight down. O, es, e. Emos, remember that it's different in these top two. Emos, is, and then back to the ER ending N. All right. Yo decido, I decide. Tú decides, you decide. Él decide, he decides. Nosotros decidimos, we decide. Vosotros decidís, y'all decide. Ellos deciden, they decide. All right. So hopefully this is making some connections for you and you're kind of beginning to follow along really well. All right, if not, make sure to go back through and check and see what happened, all right? Go through those steps one by one. I will say, go ahead, go to Google and just find a long list of regular verbs. It is important to know we're talking about regular verbs here. So type in regular Spanish verbs and just go to town, conjugate as many as you can because that's going to help you. All right. And the more comfortable you are with this, where you're using the whole box, the better this next step is going to be. All right. So let's go ahead and skip on to the next step. And this is what you will see on your notebook, in your notes that you're taking as your practice. Okay. So I have over here, this is what you'll see on your notes. You'll have a person followed by a verb, and you're going to tell me what conjugation that should be. All right. So we have nosotros and beber. So the first thing I want you to do is think, okay, I'm going to go up to my people, nosotros. What person is that? Well, nosotros, it means we, and that includes myself. So that's first person, and then where there's more than one person, so plural. So nosotros, first person, plural. Now, this is, what kind of verb is it? It's an ER verb, so I want to go to my ER endings. Now, this is a different verb altogether. However, the endings stay the same. All right, so we're just going to look at those endings. So we have an ER verb, and I want to go to first person plural, amos. All right, now I take my B, E, B, and then I'm just going to add amos, bebemos. All right, do the same thing with bailar. So yo. What person is that? First, singular. And our verb is bailar. It's an AR verb. So I'm going to go up to my AR verb endings. And I'm going to go to my first person singular, which is an O. So we're left with bile, because remember we take off the AR. We're left with bile. And then we have a new O to put on the end. All right. Let's do one more example here. We have two. That is second person singular. And we're going to look at the verb here, recibir. It is an IR verb, so I go to my IR verb endings. I take off my IR. Do not forget to take off your IR or AR or ER. It's very important that you take that off, okay? It changes everything. If you don't take it off, make sure you take that off. Don't forget that step, all right? So we're in second person singular. Second person singular ending is ES. So I have receive, take off my IR, ES, recibes. All right. That is how you're going to go about doing that activity on your worksheet. And remember, you can do so much practice with this. Like I said, just find a list of regular verbs. It's important to do regular because there's a lot of irregulars too. do those regular verbs and just practice doing the boxes until you have those endings memorized, until you have the people memorized. Practice doing that and do the additional practice that is on your worksheet because that is going to help you as well. Just connect it to your brain. Vale, hasta la próxima.